Hi, my name is Koku with blackfilm.com, and I'm here with director Shan Nicholson, and we're here to talk about the upcoming STARZ series, the BMF documentary, Blowing Money Fast. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Why do you think so many people in this world are so enamored and captivated by BMF and this story and this family?
I think it starts with Big Meech. I think he is a larger than life character. Getting to talk to him, the time that I did in making this documentary, I kind of understood why he's this very charismatic, just larger than life kind of figure. And then the cultural side of it as well, the fact that he was in the center of hip hop at a very crucial time for Atlanta. A lot of things that were going on in Atlanta. He made it rain. He came up with, so there's just a lot of things that are still relevant today that he touched, and kind of was responsible for in a lot of ways. So I think that's kind of why his story still resonates.
And I wonder if, what you think. I mean, as far as like having Meech's buy-in and his family's buy-in, but you're also in this documentary, just in fairness, you're offering also a voice to law enforcement and other members of BMF. And some of those ties were not as strong anymore, obviously, with time. I mean, we're even talking about familial disconnections as well. So how were you able to get everyone on board, even though everybody wasn't sort of speaking the same language?
Well, it was our intention from the start to give a 360-degree view, right? I mean, this is by nature, it's a rise and fall story. And obviously the fall of BMF is is because of law enforcement. So we felt that it was only right to sort of build the same way we build the organization and gave it personality and gave it character and gave it a sort of I guess character is the only word that comes to mind right now. We wanted to do the same with law enforcement. These aren't two-dimensional characters on either side, right? We know the motivation for the brothers. We understand the circumstances that they came from and wanted to rise above. But we felt that it was only right to give law enforcement that same sort of treatment, and understand their motivation and get to know them as characters as well. Excuse me.
I think what's interesting, Shan, is that as you say that, you find that even with law enforcement, they were actually quite impressed with the operation itself. So it's not like they hated them. They were just doing what they had to do. So I thought that was interesting too.
Yeah, I think there was a mutual respect in a way. So there was a respect between, and the same, it's funny because I talked to Meech. I said, we interviewed Jack Harvey, for the documentary. He's like, wow, you got Jack Harvey? Man, he was amazing. Like the way he put together a case was like, so there was like, it goes both ways.
Right.
Like, BMF is like equally as impressed with how law enforcement took them down as law enforcement was equally as impressed as how they put their organization together and how they operated it. And I think there's still, it's funny because I think, not all of the skeletons are out of the closet.
Right.
Like there's still secrets that are buried there that how much money was actually made. And I think at the end they confiscated something like 250 million, but that was a drop in the bucket for BMF in their heyday. It wasn't. So
I was telling Chris earlier, I was pretty much, when I say a kid, like 17 or something like that, and like sneaking in and like doing the before 11, trying to get in the club, like sipping one drink, for like the night. And I told him, I was like, my experience with BMF, because I went to school down in Atlanta, was that I can remember being in the club and it'd be like, BMF is in the building, so everybody's drinks are free. And we're just like, oh my God, like, I literally only had $3 in my pocket. And I remember, like, I didn't know who they were. I'm like, whoever these BMF people are, like, they're the most benevolent, nicest people around.
Very generous.
We're never thirsty. And I came here with.
I had the same experience before I was a DJ before I became a filmmaker, and I was used to DJ all these clubs in New York City, and that same experience would it would be like, who are these guys? Like with because it was like also rolling through a club in New York City with like 10 to 12 guys was just like you you
No.
couldn't do it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like you'd get stopped at the door and you're just like, no, wait a second. Here's like, these guys and they're spending money like all the bottles are going to that one section. You're just like,
Who are these people? I don't know who
Yeah.
they are.
Yeah. So there's always an allure around, the organization, and then of course the music, and the
Yeah.
billboards and all of the, just being a fan of hip hop, you kind of heard of it in.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did like my own research as a hip hop head, for sure. But it's funny because I never like I think when I think about like the underworld, I mean, there's nobody that just like reigns forever, I
Right.
think it's really kind of easy to sort of squarely place the blame on Meech because he was just so loud and like liked to be front and center and enjoyed the fame. Whereas
Right.
Terry really kind of wanted to sort of play the back, was a businessman and just a little bit more conservative about his. But I mean, when we look at history and time, I mean, there's somebody like Frank Lucas shows up with a chinchilla at the Ali Frazier fight, and that's kind of was the downfall. And a lot of that seems to kind of be what happened here in a way too. I mean,
Yeah.
not solely, but it's kind of like it was either going to happen now or later. But what
Yeah.
if? Yeah.
Well, there's, God loves irony, right? Because,
Hmm.
Ironically, Meech was the careful one. He was never caught on any wiretaps.
Yes,
He
you
was
said.
never caught with any drugs. None of, I mean, there were people that eventually snitched on him, but there was physical evidence of Meech being involved in this organization was very, very thin.
Hmm.
It was ironically Terry that was the one that was caught on the wire and sort of was the linchpin in connecting the brothers.
Hmm.
But there is something to be said about Meech's flashiness and his effort to go over the top that absolutely, I don't know if it was an extra motivation for law enforcement to up their game.
Hmm.
I think eventually it was going to happen. I think when you run an organization that big, it's just a matter of time before the dominoes start to fall. But it didn't help. I don't think like billboards helped his case. In fact, I think talking to law enforcement and hearing their perspective, that there was a slap in the face, and they felt that way. So they were like,
Hmm.
okay, well, we're going to turn up the heat.
The
So
one thing I found very curious about their business model is that, I would think, anyway, if I was running a business, which is probably why I did not have a multi-million-dollar conglomerate in my life, but I wouldn't be just like bringing everybody along because good vibes. You know what I mean?
right,
And it's
yeah,
like Meech is like recruiting everybody from everywhere. We've got St. Louis, we've got LA, we've got all these new friends in Atlanta. And it's like, and they were still able to make money and it was still a successful business. But it's like, what would make you just decide to just trust this new guy?
well, I see. I think that's maybe. I don't. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, yes, they had hubs all over the place, but I don't think that was. I think his entourage. There was a very small inner circle,
I see what you're saying.
and
Yeah.
then the people that were around were just
Yeah.
people that were around. I don't think there was necessarily like he was just like, hey, you want to sell drugs? Like, in fact, he didn't. It was very. Like he didn't have those conversations.
Right.
You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
he didn't have any conversation. It was like, I'll
Yeah.
meet you at the place. And then
Right.
if there was a talk, there was a talk. There was no talking on the phone. He didn't conduct business, and it was J-Bo and a lot of other sort of
Hmm.
soldiers down the line that were really kind of in the field. And that core was incredibly dedicated to Meech.
You
That
could hear
that
it on the calls even.
yeah,
Yeah.
he created a strong unit and a strong brotherhood. Eventually people did sort of turn, but the vast majority, stuck by his side, which is interesting. That's that it, you other conspiracy cases, mafia cases, RICO cases, there's almost like a dozen, snitches that kind of like bring the organization down.
Hmm.
And sometimes it starts from the top and it erodes the core. Um, but this wasn't that kind of case. There was a lot
No.
of loyalty and the law enforcement side had it was pretty thin, at least on Misha's side, since there wasn't any sort of physical evidence. It relied solely on
Hmm.
cooperation, which was
And I mean, Meech is getting out pretty soon. So that reception will be quite interesting to see how he'll be received, right? I mean, I'm sure it'll be a party. He's entitled to
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I'm sure it'll be a party not to forget. I hope I'm invited.
Exactly. You guys have done a little work around here. But I just again, like I think it's just really interesting that especially that the family is involved to be able to say that, you have his sister and his mom speaking here in this documentary and offering some kind of just like a show of what the family was really about. And then you look into, because I think a lot of times people want to blame family for the decisions that the kids make. I know me, like I walk out the house. I mean, I'm a totally different person. I walk in the house, it's like, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. Like, no, my parents just know me in a different kind of way.
Right.
But when you see that their family, I mean, father musician, like they were not drug dealers. This is not the kind of home they came from.
No, they
Yeah.
weren't abusive, and they weren't,
No.
it was a loving family. It was a
Yeah.
loving core. I think what failed Meech and Terry wasn't the family. It was the system.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it was the environment that they grew up in. There wasn't Detroit at that time. You got to think about the domino effect that Detroit went through to get to that point, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you had the flight of all the major industries in
Mm-hmm.
Detroit. 1968 riots would burn out huge swaths of the city that never recovered, that still to this
Mm-hmm.
day haven't recovered. And what replaces all this industry and all this, blight is drugs. This is the new sort of, you know, game in town, so to speak. And Detroit became a major hub.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if there were other choices for Meech and Terry, they probably would have taken them, But I think that was the sort of, and the desperation of it, right? It wasn't. They were really up against the wall. They were going to get kicked out of their house,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
and it's like you make desperate decisions in desperate times, and I think that was something that they needed the money quickly, and it was quick to be made,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they saw a way out, with the drug trade, and he says it at the very beginning of the series. He's like, he tried to play a dirty game in the most honorable way that he could, and kind of understanding that it is, a dirty game, but he's going to try to play it as best as he can, without.
I mean, even when you look at like the rivalries and the wars and the gangs and things like that, now there's a lot of bloodshed. And I think that even you just saying that it was very important to Meech as well, that this was not something where they were like killing enemies and rivals. And it just was not that type of party for them.
No, no,
Yeah.
it was about money, like
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, it was about money and upliftment, and I think, you know, and I was like, how do you run a multi-million dollar, a billion dollar operation, and who knows how much money they were actually making without, shedding any blood. I'm like, really?
Right. Like, can that happen? Yeah.
And I mean, there might be bones in the closet, who knows, but
Mm-hmm.
my point is that, his motto and his sense of diplomacy kind of avoided those traps. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't concerned about turf. He wasn't
Mm-hmm.
concerned about being the biggest, baddest guy on the block. He wasn't necessarily like a gangster in that way. He was
Mm-hmm.
about making money. And
Yeah.
so it's like, if you double crossed him, let's say you stole from him, well, then you're never going to get the price again. You're you're
Right.
you're 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 excluding yourself out of that equation, because they were making so much money and selling it for cheaper than the competition,
Mm-hmm.
that it's like, why would you want to burn that bridge? You
Yeah.
know, it doesn't make sense. If you're about making money, you wouldn't want to burn that. You want to keep that faucet on, right?
Mm-hmm. And
It's
it's
a
quite
bad business model.
exactly. No, but that's everything I hear, and like as I'm seeing, breaking it down in terms of like how like his management style and everything. I've been saying that like I look at it and relate it to the corporate world and things that I've had to. I'm just like looking at that, like the kind of boss you'd want to work for, and Meech being the kind of boss that you want to show and prove that you can give results, because he's not heavy-handed. He's not some draconian, nasty person. So that person you're actually going to work 10 times harder for than the person
Right.
that's just on your butt, like just like
Yeah, you could either rule with love, or you could rule
Mhm.
with fear.
Mhm.
And you'll get a lot better results if people love you than if they fear you.
Mhm.
You
I
know,
absolutely agree with that. And like I said, I've watched up to the 6 episodes, and I binged. I was just so immersed in
Oh,
this.
wow.
Yeah, it was so good. And I think that what people are going to appreciate is that you have these, basically every episode is kind of set up like a chapter. So it brings you through a time. And so when y'all even talked about early to Detroit with the industry leaving, white flight, and then of course drugs came into play, and then the Atlanta transition, like it just walks you through the journey and seeing how things went. But I have
What's
to
your favorite
say,
episode? Out of curiosity, what's your favorite episode?
I think my favorite episode is when we got to meet his assistant, because she has what episode would that be? Because she was like, she has a loyalty to her that was so interesting. Oh no, so that would be episode 6, I think, because she was just like, when he was kind of asking her what decision she wants to make, like, you know,
Yeah,
you have a choice. Again,
right,
that's that not ruling, you know, it's not, it's just like, listen, you have a choice.
right.
And then she made the choice that she decided to make. But that was, to me, because, you know, seeing her speak, and even like when I look at these people that are all involved in this world, no one's really like, they're not elderly.
No,
Yeah, so it's not even,
this happened a couple years ago.
you're
The
it's just like this is not that long ago.
Yeah,
And the peak of Atlanta, like in terms of like when they were running it, I mean, that was a while ago, let's say about 20 years ago or so. But these people, no one's really that old. So even as I'm
no.
seeing her tell this story, it's like, well, what a wild life and transition afterwards, I'm sure, that you've had to go through. But I'm very interested in her story and just the way that she was thinking, because again, he's someone that she's like, you know, I take a liking to you. Like, I like how you handle your business. Come
Yeah,
along. Like, and then, so that's why I was so, you know, kind of captivated by her. That
yeah.
I liked the introduction into sort of understanding what Detroit was like initially. And then when we started talking to the actual BMF members, and going into which is episode 2, I believe, when you start talking about like even the crack era and
Oh yeah,
things.
2 into 3. Yeah,
The
it's
yeah, yeah.
3 is when they become BMF. Before that,
Yes.
yeah,
So what they're talking about, I believe it was before, when you were just talking about what Detroit was like, and you're actually even seeing people smoke crack, you're seeing people on the corner, you're seeing how it did just like destroy people.
yeah,
And then so then and then again, the brilliance of this, because like as you said, it kind of brings it around 360, is that you're starting to see now that like there's so much you can love about them, but then you see what are we, you know, why do we love them, and what do they have to do in order for us to, or for the entire community to be satisfied in whatever way. So there's a lot of different things you have to balance and grapple with, you know. But it's a good show, and I think it's a great companion piece for people that are in love with the series as well. Hmm.
thank you.
Hmm.
Appreciate that.
Thank you so much. So this concludes everything here.
All right. Thank you
No,
for your
no,
time.
no, no, no. It was great talking to you. But once again, my name is Koku with blackfilm.com, and I am here with director Shan Nicholson, and we were talking about the upcoming STARZ series, the BMF documentary, Blowing Money Fast. It's premiering on Sunday, October 23rd at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Pacific Time, only on STARZ. Guys, it's great. You're gonna love it just as much as you love the series. And STARZ just been doing their thing with this BMF. Gotta love it. Thanks so much, man. Take care.
Take care.
Bye. If you want to see more content like this on blackfilm.com, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring that bell.